when it comes to being the best you can is believing that you're the best. And individually, and we're in a team sport, so everyone had to believe that. So I could believe it, but I needed everyone else around us to do it as well. And I was only 23 when I looked back at it, so I was early in my career. But even I had the feeling that day that we could go and do something special. And some of our boys got some haircuts that were like something I never seen out of the book, you know, like those haircuts are now trending now, you know what I mean? Those boys were running these haircuts back in 08, you know, last of the Mohegans stuff where it's a skinhead and mullets at the back, and I'm thinking, wow, man, these guys mean business.
Adam Blair is more than just a footballer. He's a coach and an administrator, but of course, he's a former star of the league world, of the NRL, and of course, of the Kiwis. A former captain who, before the world, fought on the field and off the field to retain the mana of the Kiwi jersey and his Māori identity. Brought up by his grandfather, he went to Australia formerly as a rugby player and became a league star with the Melbourne Storm. And of course, he was a former Kiwis captain in a World Cup, playing Tonga in Hamilton in a game many will never forget. This is Adam Blair's story. This is Indigenous 100. Adam Blair, tēnā koe. Welcome to Indigenous 100. It's awesome to have you. And a lot to talk about. But I just wanted to start by telling you a story. It's not a league story. League aligned. I worked on Māori radio in Te Reo, and I used to talk to an old kaumātua every fortnight to get an NRL rap, mainly to do with the Warriors. And this old kaumātua somehow would always crowbar the Storm into the conversation. I couldn't figure out why. Always. And then he'd crowbar into the conversation a second rower, loose forward, by the name of Adam Blair into the conversation. I kept going, what's this old fella doing? And it wasn't until, about a year later, which goes to show you how slow I am. Ngāpuhi, you see. That it was him and Awaga who said, you know that old kaumātua you're talking to? I said, yeah. He's a Campbell. I said, oh, yeah. No, I talked to him full line. He goes, you know why he mentions the Storm? I said, no. There's Adabe, that's his grandfather. That's Adam Blair's grandfather. I said, but they're completely different names. He goes, yeah, that's his grandfather. And so your koro, your Krani Papa, was my league expert, which is why he kept crowbarring the Storm into conversation. Lovely old man. And I think a very proud koro. And would love to regale me with stories, as I said, about the Storm, even though I was more worried about the Warriors. He wasn't doing it in a kind of whakaihi, arrogant way. He would just talk about you as if he was kind of a passionate observer. And the reason why I wanted to open that story is because my understanding is, you two were quite close.
Yep. Well, now he's not with us anymore. Even the more reason why we were so close. A big part of my journey was around him and the want for me to go over and leave Whangarei to go over there and chase the dream and go on that journey. He was my manager at the time. Obviously, being your grandfather, he's, like you just said, he's passionate. There's so much love. He kind of brought us up in a way that he was, losing my father at a young age. He was our man of the house. Besides me being the oldest son, he was obviously my mum's shoulder to lean on when times were tough, and done everything for us as a family, and have really fond memories of my granddad and everything that he's done for us, and the knowledge that he had not only of me in rugby league, but just in Te Ao Māori and everything that he's done for Māori was remarkable. But a guy that I always lent on for guidance and just help when times were tough, especially when I was on my journey at a young age.
Because he mentioned to me that you were pretty much brought up in the Hokianga, which I didn't know. Whereabouts specifically in the Hokianga?
Pangaru.
Now, for the uninitiated, where's Pangaru?
It's like on the west. So if you go through the Mangamuka Gorge and you head west as far as you can go, that's pretty much where we are. A little country town up there where we had a family farm, which we still do have, is where we grew up there. And, the best part of my growing up as a child was those memories, being able to do whatever I wanted to do, and still having a connection to home. It was some special times.
Yeah, so as someone whose whānau's kind of in Waima, we always thought those Pangaru fellas were a little bit hotatu.
Well, the lucky thing with us is that we weren't actually right in Pangaru. We were out of the outskirts of Pangaru. That's where our farm was. So we weren't around everyone. So we were kind of like isolated in our own little space.
Oh, so heading back towards Pawaringa.
Yeah. So heading back to if you've gone up to Pangaru, the big waterfall there.
Oh, yeah.
So that's part of our land there, the waterfall. And then that's our farmland just there. So that's where we live. So we're away from if you think about town, the hustle and bustle of everyone.
So you're a kāmira, Campbell?
Yes.
Oh.
Miti.
Yes.
Yes, miti.
Oh, the awfala himiona.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh.
So we're all, that's where
that explains it then. That explains it, because that kāmira whānau, well, as you know, and you won't say this, so I will. That kāmira whānau is a well-regarded whānau. As you know, Himiona Kāmira was the great scholar of Ngāpuhi and of Hokianga. Tremendous family. Talented whānau. Talented. As I said, you can't say this. Yeah. but talented whānau. Oh, that makes a lot of sense now. Wow.
So my granddad was just passionate, you know what I mean? He cared for us and wanted us to make the most of our opportunities, and hence why when there was opportunity, and you're obviously a Warriors fan back in the days, and most probably still are, an opportunity was to go to the Warriors, but he wanted me to go out there and explore the world, and wanted me to go over to Australia and chase it.
But my understanding is you weren't brought up playing league.
Rugby all the way through. I loved it. Loved the game of rugby from the ages of 5 when you're running around in Kensington Park in Whangarei and bare feet, right up with all my mates growing up, and still good mates of a lot of those boys up in Whangarei now, till I left Whangarei to go and learn the game of rugby league in Australia.
But the way he used to talk about you was that actually you could have done anything, no matter what the sport was, because you were pretty handy, he said, at a whole bunch of different things. And but sport was kind of, in his words, a fortunate thing for you, because there were some issues, is the description that comes to mind. But sport was an awesome outlet for you, and you were talented.
It was the only, I guess, when you grow up in a small place like, I guess, the Hokianga and Pangaru, and from the young ages of 5 to 12 to 13, you could find yourself in a bit of trouble. Yeah. But I was very grateful for, I guess, my upbringing up there, when teaching and learning, I guess, respect, leadership, resilience, hard work ethic. My dad used to have me running, in a rubber sack, trying to make sure that I lose weight to make all the rep teams, which, mind you, weren't hard up in the Hokianga to make the rep teams, but had me running the roads, and he was in the truck telling me to hurry up, and I hated it. I'm not the best runner, and although I've played all these games around at Rugby League, I'm not the best runner, but I had a real strong mindset of being competitive and not wanting to let anyone down, and I think I took that on my journey as well.
I reckon, and people in the North Hokianga, being a South Hokianga, we would say Hokianga A and being North Hokianga B. There's a kōrero about your tupuna Tarutaru, is that when he was preparing for war, he was, they would say, ko Tarutaru he ngā tātarai puta nei te rua, that he was a great warrior coming out of his cave, and literally ground would shake. And that comes to mind because it seems to me that in your sporting career anyway, there's a bit of that goes on, that quite mild-mannered as we're sitting here talking, but on the field, you're kind of a completely different person. There's people talk about like alter egos that come out. Is that a fair assessment, or is that something that you acknowledge? Or
Yeah, I just think, as my journey went on, my career, and luckily at a young age, I understood who I was and where I come from and where I belonged. And I tried to carry that with me. I guess I've had, my dad passed away at a young age, who was a big part of what I did. So, I've taken the people of the North, Pangaru, my dad, all the people that have gone before us. And, when I get on that field, I take a look up to the sky, and that's who I represent. Who I represent. So I feel like I turn into a Māori warrior. I go out there and do whatever it takes to be the best, to compete, to win everything I do, to be the toughest player to handle on the field. And that's the kind of the mentality I took throughout my career, even when I obviously represent New Zealand. And that space it's a moment of reflection of the journey that I've been on, and to the people that have guided me into that space, to be able to be fortunate enough to represent my country. Yeah. So I acknowledge that every time I went to the field.
And it's a proud tradition that continues, James Fisher Harris.
Yes, correct.
Being another boy from the North Hokianga. I mean, there must be an immense sense of pride that something that not you started, but that proud lineage, and a big part of that DNA that you carried onto the field continues now.
I think, not till you finish, you realise the impact that you've had on someone like James Fisher Harris. And, I've been in the camps just recently, in the New Zealand camps, and been able to sit with them and talk about, my journey, but also talk about his journey and the things that he's been able to create now for the people up north. But again, he sat there and said to me, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be doing what I do. So, but you don't understand that till you actually finish the game and sitting down with these people. And I always kept a close eye on all our boys that come out of the north, because I think it's an opportunity to be able to, congratulate them first and foremost, but then follow their journey. And I'm real close with James through obviously our connection to home. And I like to, reflect with him on his journey as well, but also, reflect on my journey about being, I guess, a role model and a leader for all those kids in our rangatahi coming through the pathway.
Well, as you know, there's thousands of those Harrises. It's about time
they're everywhere. They're everywhere.
About time they got one. But what's that like, though, when someone says something like that about you? Because, it must be emotional hearing something like that, particularly someone who's played so well, and also is now, like you, a captain of the national team.
Oh, I guess it's touching. It's rewarding, because when you're on that journey, you don't actually. I didn't actually think about that when I was on that journey about I am a role model for those kids, but when I sat back and reflected, that's when I realised that. So.
You never thought that throughout your career?
No. As I got a bit older, I think that's because when I got older, I understood life a little bit better. When you're a young kid coming through the grades, you're just trying to get through and make it and try and represent. But at the same time, I didn't think that I was a role model at that time. But as I got older, that's when I realised, no, whatever I do, and you have a family, that's when you become that person that you're a role model, not only for your kids, your family, but everyone back home. So it took me a while to realise that, and being able to sit with James and talk about those and have those conversations, but then passing that knowledge to him now for him to pass to the next generation, because now I'm in the background. He's now our warrior for the North, and he's the one that's going to be paving the way for our next kids coming through.
Why league?
I just got an opportunity, and like everything I do, I give everything a crack. I never say no to something. If someone said, "Do you want to have a go at this?" I'll say yes, and that's what I did. I took an opportunity. I got given 2 years to go over and learn the game, and I thought I was coming home after 2 years, but enjoyed it so much that I was hoping that the Storm kept me on and signed me long term, and they did. And just fell in love with, I guess, the physicality of the game. I played rugby, and I moved from fullback to wing to second five to centre, then into the forwards, because I just loved the
being on the ball, being around the ball,
toughness about it. And I thought I was a bit of a waste out wide. So league gave me that outlet where it was a competitive thing, a competitive game where it was you and me, and you've got to get the best of each other, and only the best win. And you got to turn up every day. You got to make sacrifices, and I think that's what made me who I am today. Is, you know, I gave everything a crack. I took up every opportunity I could, and the rewards were forth.
But of course, the legendary corridor about the Storm is that it's hell of a tough, particularly in pre-season, and, you know, everything that goes in that pre-season program. And obviously it works because of the Storm and the proud history that the Storm has. But as you said, you weren't someone who liked running.
Hated it. I did my first pre-season when I was 2003. I think I was 16, and we went on army camp. This was Craig Bellamy's first time as coach for Melbourne Storm, so he was changing the mentality and the way the club works. He wanted mentally tough players and guys that could defend well. So we go on army camp, and that army camp changed my life for the better. But at the time, I was like, man, I'm not going to play rugby league because I want to cry. I want to run away, but we didn't know where we were. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to make it. But coming out of that gave me that mental side of understanding that, you know, our mental space is a strong space to be in. If you can overcome some of these obstacles and put yourself in these situations where you can come out of it and take yourself to a dark place and push through those barriers, then you can do anything.
So this is one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. How do you overcome it? Because for us mere mortals who, I said to Kaikara France that, you know, don't spend a lot of time in the gym, as surprising to you as that may seem, just from first glance, obviously. But for a lot of us, that seems... we think it's easy to break. How do you maintain yourself so that you don't end up breaking where it is really difficult and challenging mentally and physically? How do you overcome it?
Oh, I think for me and through my whole journey, it's about facing it first and understanding what it is and recognizing the challenge. And then it's having that good support around you to be able to push through. Throughout my whole journey, I've had all these challenges around, you're not good enough, or, you know, the media pressure outside, and especially in our game, it's results driven. And if you're not performing well, there's pressure on you to not be there, or you're on all this money, you should be playing at this sport. But the thing I took out of all of that stuff, and it was my upbringing, the resilience that I learned at a young age, and being really mentally tough through some tough periods and tough times as a young kid. But then also my journey started down in the Melbourne Storm, where I was put in some dark place as a young kid. And if I didn't find my way out of there, I would have been back in Whangarei or back in the Hokianga, where I thought if I just faced the obstacle, and recognised it, and then found a way to overcome. Yeah, that was my way of working things out.
Because that would have been the easier way out, is go, this is too hard, I'm going to go home.
Yeah.
So what kept you on the path? So I know facing the obstacle is what you're thinking in your mind, but what did you have a sense in your own mind at the time that if I do this, I can end up being not just a good rugby league player, but actually a really great rugby league player? Was that something already in your mind, or were you just thinking, I've just got to get through this next bit?
Oh, I just didn't want to let people down. And I guess, you know, from the start of our conversation, my granddad was a big part of that. Is I didn't want to be that person that let someone down, that had all this love and aroha for me, that wanted me to go on this journey. And going back there to miserably face him was mostly a fear of mine not to do.
Really?
Yeah, because they wanted this for me, and I didn't want to let anyone down. I didn't want to let the people of the Hokianga down. I didn't want to leave Whangarei down, because people went on that journey with me. Even if I didn't know that, they all went on that journey with me and thought that I was going over to play NRL. Luckily, it all paid off. But there was times there where it was tough, and the reflection and reflecting back on that, it was my granddad that got me through those tough periods. It was calling him and asking him for advice. It was not wanting to let him down, not wanting to let my brothers and sisters down. Those are the people that I spoke to that believed in myself, that gave me that little extra motivation to go out and keep pushing through it and being, I guess, proud of who I am, but then being tough in those tough moments.
How many games of league had you played before you went over as a 16-year-old to the Storm?
3. 3 games, and I was just filling in because we had a mate from up in Whangarei said, hey, we need some players to fill in for a trial down in Hibiscus Coast. We'll grab a couple of the rugby boys. So myself, my brother, and a couple of our mates, we just went down and we ended up making the league team. And we're like, oh, how are we going to play this? They said, oh, well, you'll play rugby on Saturday and then we'll travel down the Hibiscus Coast and we'll play league on Sunday. I said, oh, well, if we can get a van of all the boys, then we can make this work. So I got to play with my younger brother. And from there, we got selected in the team. I played 3 games because I got injured, and then went over to Aussie and mucked around in the game over there, and then got picked up that way. So I didn't even know the game of league. I was running around like a headless chook chasing the ball, and they were like, bro, what are you doing? And I said, I don't know, like, I'm just trying to tackle someone. And they said, no, you just have to stay on this side of the field or this side of the field. I'm like, oh, bro, this game's easy. I don't even have to run anywhere. Just give me the ball. So that's where it all started for me. And it was 3 games deep into rugby league, and I had no idea what I was doing. I just was running around with my mates having a bit of fun.
So when did you actually think, I can be pretty good at this game?
Oh, I didn't even think I was going to be any good at rugby league. Even before I even went down full time into the Melbourne system, there was no thought in my mind that I was ever going to make it.
So even after that 2-year stretch, when you got signed as a full-time player, even then you didn't think, I'm okay at this?
There was a time in 2005 where it could have gone either way for me, where I could have just gone and got a trade, which I started to go and get a trade because I was thinking, geez, I'm not going to make it here. I better make sure I look for a job. Same thing again. I didn't want to go home because I didn't want to face the music. So same thing. I spoke to my mum and my granddad and said, hey, if I don't make rugby league, I'm going to get a trade and I'm not coming home. I'm going to stay here. And they said, whatever you do, we'll support you. So there was a moment there that I didn't think, and a time that I didn't think I was going to make rugby league. Gratefully that, you need a bit of luck on that journey and an opportunity. And there was someone that was injured and down at the Melbourne Storm at that time, and I wasn't in the best shape body wise, but they saw the potential and the talent in me that if I did work hard, I could be an opportunity of playing for the Melbourne Storm. So I took that opportunity as a challenge to go and challenge myself and make the most of this one opportunity that I got, and I just got lucky.
Do you reckon if you'd gone to another club at that time, you could have still been a great player? Or could it only have ever ended up this way if you'd gone to the Melbourne Storm?
I think, my foundations were laid at the Melbourne Storm.
Okay.
I don't think that I could have gone anywhere. And even if I look back, I don't think I would have. So everything I did in the game of rugby league, my foundations all started at the Melbourne Storm, and I carried that on through my whole career. I never changed the way I played. I added a few things to the toolkit, but I didn't really change, work ethic, desire and want to compete because all those things were instilled in us at a young age at the Melbourne Storm. And I don't know if I would have got that from any other club, but the only other club that I had the opportunity to either sign to was the Warriors at that time. I can't, hindsight's a pretty cool thing, but if I think about it, the Storm got me to where I was because of all the hard work that I had to put in and the hard work that they instilled in us.
Did it also help because obviously geographically Melbourne's a different city to Sydney? Yep. Not as much of a media glare, obviously, because Aussie rules is a big sport in Melbourne, right? Takes up most of the front pages and back pages, sports pages of the newspapers over there. So did that kind of help, particularly as a young fella, not having so much of this media attention, not as much social media happening at the time. So it was a confluence of kind of factors happening which helped.
Yeah, a really good start to an introduction to rugby league, and I guess not being in the spotlight because, like you said, I've done Sydney. We didn't watch too much rugby league down in Melbourne. It was all about us, and you build a real strong family connection between the group of men and the partners and the kids that were there at the time. Even if you're a young kid, you still feel like you belong to something. But the amount of vision that we did on oppositions gave me my foundations to understanding the game of rugby league even more. I thought when I left the Melbourne Storm that I knew everything about the game because we done that much stuff on rugby league in there because that's what they do, that I knew a lot about the game before I even got on the field. So not having that pressure around us measurably helped a lot on my journey and understanding what comes with the pressure of being a professional athlete without being in the spotlight. Having the likes of, I guess, Cooper Cronk, Cameron Smith, Greg Inglis, all those guys taking Billy Slater, who take the spotlight away from people around them because they are so good at what they've done. Me as a player sat at the back and didn't have to say a word, just had to go get my job done every week because those guys were good enough to do what they do.
And I do want to talk about when you leave the Storm eventually, but just to tag back a bit, I mean, it must be, you must learn a lot just from osmosis when you're sitting with people like the likes of which you've talked about. I mean, Greg Inglis. But Cooper Cronk, and as you say, all those legends of the game now, you must just learn a lot from just sitting there and watching.
Yeah, well, I guess, I've got to thank Cooper Cronk for my career as well because, I played outside him a lot of my time down, 121 games I played down at the Storm, and a lot of that was outside Cooper Cronk, and we know what he's done in the game and the premierships that he's won and the amount of, origins he's been involved in. He guided me through a lot of my journey as a player, as a edge back rower to learn the game. So, and then I guess watching them like as a player, then watching them in the Origin arena and understanding that those are your mates that you play off week in, week out, and seeing what they can do, only gives you a lot more gratitude in what we created at the Melbourne Storm.
Were you ever approached to play Origin and then potentially end up playing for Australia?
Yeah, when I left home, I played Queensland 16s as a kid. Man, I loved it. I loved the whole Queensland spirit. The Queensland, the core. I'm a massive fan of Queensland. My wife's from Queensland, but I played under 16s, under 17s Queensland, and I just love the rivalry that they have as, New South Wales and Queensland, and the whole conversations, and I'm sure they still bring these up, is about the past and what they used to do. And the first thing they said is, we get in the first scrum, we're having a fight. And I'm thinking, I'm fresh from up north. I think you don't have to ask me twice. You don't have to ask me twice. Get us in the scrum, let's go. So the whole camp, besides having a couple of training sessions, they're all talking about who's going to throw the first punch. And I'm thinking, wherever I am, I'm coming from, 10 men in just to throw a punch because this is what we're talking about. So, and I think the first scrum we had, there was a punch thrown, and we're straight into it. And that's the spirit of what they have when it comes to Queensland. And then I think we got to 19s, and then there was an opportunity there where they said we got picked in Queensland 19s, and they said you either got to pick New Zealand or Australia, and with no hesitation, New Zealand's home. And that's when another reflection comes, is like who do I want to represent and why do I want to represent it? And there was no other feeling for me that day was to say, sorry, I'm out of the team, I'm playing for New Zealand.
Yeah, it wasn't also fear again of the grandfather and mother? And
No, because I felt like I was, leaving home. I was like, see you later, no one's going to tell me what to do, you know what I mean? Like, I was just like, oh man, I'm sick of people telling me what to do. I'm just going to just be a kid and just have fun. And there was no thought that crossed my mind that, if I was to choose one or the other, that someone would, tell me off for doing it. But I knew what I wanted to do in my heart, that New Zealand is home, and, I could have been away from New Zealand for 20 years and still New Zealand's still going to be home for me. So there was no way that I could stand in front of a New Zealand team watching the haka and not singing the national anthem. So I chose to represent home.
You were known for traits, behaviour, of not being backward and coming forward whenever there was a bit of a melee. There's a situation with a man by the name of Glenn Stewart, which comes to mind. And I do want to unpack that. And I know you blamed that on your Northland whakapapa. But I always felt like the media was a bit unkind to you. It was like this used to follow you around. And my argument to many other people, perhaps again due to our connections by whakapapa, was no, it was never his fault. I mean, if you watch footage, it was always something that happened, and it just happened to be that you were geolocated in the same situation. But you had this kind of reputation of someone who wasn't backward and coming forward and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think I got a lot of the reputation of being a grub on the field. But I think when I finished up the game, and I'll go back to the Manly stuff, when I finished the game, I wanted to be that player that everyone wanted to play with but hated playing against. And that's kind of the reputation I wanted to have when I finished. And when people ask, what legacy did you want to leave when you finished, that was it, as someone that done everything for my teammates, but everyone hated playing against. And I felt like that's where that reputation come from, is that I wore my heart on my sleeve, and I try to do everything for my teammates, and my teammates were my brothers on the field. So if anything happened, I wanted to be in there amongst it, getting amongst it. And if I look at that Manly fight, yes, I ran about 5 men deep into this fight when there was already 6 people in there. But you could do it. You're allowed to. It was there was no rule saying you can't run in and throw an uppercut into someone. But that's what the game is. That's what the game had back then. You're allowed to do that, and I guess that just transpired to the stuff on the way off to the sideline. That was all. I think you don't get that much time on the field to ever stand there and try and shape up and throw punches.
So okay, for the uninitiated, there was this game in Manly, and as you say, there was a melee, and you found yourself not close to it, but eventually in it. And then the ref makes a call. And I think you're sent off first, and then Glenn Stewart.
No, Glenn Stewart.
Glenn Stewart sent off first, that's right. And he gets sent off, and then you're making your way off. And I've talked to Kevin Tamati about what happened with him and Dowling. And he said words were exchanged.
Yeah.
And he wasn't the one who said the first word. And when other words were exchanged, he said, "There's no way I'm letting this guy get away with it." Were there words exchanged?
It was exactly what it was. In Melbourne, we had a rule that you run to everything that you do. You don't walk. Yeah. And my mindset going off the field, it wasn't to go and chase Glenn Stewart and try and...
It was to get off.
It was to get off the field as quick as I can so that, the 10 minutes can start. But on that journey to the sideline, the words were exchanged. He said something to me in a way that I didn't like. And so I asked him, and said something back to him. And then by that stage, it was he grabbed my jersey, I grabbed my jersey, and it's going down.
You say that a conversation, the way you describe the conversation is awfully diplomatic.
Yeah. There was a problem, I tried to solve the problem.
You tried to solve the problem verbally. Once that problem couldn't be solved verbally, yeah.
You got to take actions into your own hands.
And then, of course, his brother Brett runs a marathon.
Yeah.
To help out his brother, and at one stage there's like 5-on-1, and I was sitting there going, "Oh, this is uncouth." Our Whanong is at the bottom here. This is uncouth. But and I know we're laughing about this, and there'll be people going, "Hang on, this isn't what sport should be." But was the tone of the conversation as such that you couldn't let it lie, that something had to be done?
Well, you just knew that. Between both of us, and I guess the rivalry already built that up between the Storm and Manly, and it wasn't really. We didn't hate the Sea Eagles, but they hated us. And I've had this conversation with Kieran Foran, and Kieran Foran was on the field at the same time, and he was a part of this little ruckus on the sidelines, and I was having conversations not long ago. And he said, "Man, we just hated the guts of you guys." And I was like, well, we didn't hate you guys, to be honest. We just went, we went out there to try and win games. And so there was already a built-up rivalry without us even knowing that they hated us. So from the get-go of the game, you could feel the arms and you could feel all this niggly stuff. And I'm all for the niggle. If you're going to give it, if you're going to give it out, you're going to expect to cop it. You know what I mean? So that's where it all extended from. And then it just obviously went to the sidelines. And yes, a lot of people, and I guess if I look back on that, man, like I had a young son at that time. And my wife was in Melbourne, and she's getting messages saying, "Hey, is your husband okay?" And then she's like, "Well, what's wrong?" The games aren't on until 12 o'clock in Melbourne. She's like, "Oh, I think he's just sent off the field." So she's messaging me. I'm on the bus, and she's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I just got sent off. Had a fight on the field, so I'm just in the bus waiting for the game to finish." She's like, "Okay, all good."
Yeah. I know you didn't hate Manly, but Brookvale was a hole.
It's not the best place to play, to be honest, in the game of rugby league. Like, there are better stadiums. Brookie wasn't the best place.
Okay. I want to go back a bit to World Cup final, Kiwis and the Kangaroos, and the haka for that game, because at the time. It was the week before, the fortnight before, you played Aussie.
We played.
And there was a bit of a toweling. And there was a lot of criticism at home, and you're probably aware of it, because the media at home were going, And on paper, that Australian team was a great team. They had everyone in that team.
So good.
And here's what I remember about it the most, is the haka. And I thought, I think this could go a different way. And again, in the haka, you were someone who kind of took a bit of a leadership role. I know there are others, obviously Benji and a lot of the Māori boys, in the team, and Lukey as well, Kai and all that kind of thing. But you in particular, there was a part in the haka where I thought you'd kind of drawn a demarcation line, which is to say, it's on from now, and 2 weeks ago was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And this is different. Could you feel... Kalis as a captain, was there something that was done or said, or could you feel that you're on the brink of something and it kind of evolved and took concrete form during the haka to say, we're up for this? Had that been, or did it just happen?
Well, it's funny you bring it up, because only this morning I just chucked something up on social media. 15 years today, the World Cup 08. And my wife actually posted it up about, me scoring a try in there, and, how long ago it has been. And I was actually watching some of that 08 grand final maybe 3 or 4 days ago, just because it kept coming up in my memories. Man, that week was, and like you said, we got a hiding from the Aussies, and we weren't expected to win against them, and they had the best team. Like in rugby league terms, if you're a passionate rugby league fan, man, their team was stacked, and they had
Lockyer, Thurston, Inglis,
and you look at them now, and you go, they're nearly all immortals of the game, and they were crazy good. I think we played England the weekend before to get into the final, and I think that Monday you could just see the shift in everyone's mindset and their eyes that like that week was going to be special. And I remember telling my wife quite clearly that we were going to win the game, although she's Australian, that there was no one that was going to beat us on that day. And I think every training session, every day we'd walk around, you could just feel everyone a little bit taller.
How does that happen though? Because that's the indecipherable thing that every sports team looks for.
I think it's the one thing that when it comes to being the best you can is believing that you're the best, and individually, and we're in a team sport, so everyone had to believe that. So I could believe it, but I needed everyone else around us to do it as well. And I was only 23 when I looked back at it, so I was early in my career. But I had the feeling that day that we could go and do something special. And some of our boys got some haircuts that were like something I never seen out of the book, you know, like those haircuts are now trending now, you know what I mean? Those boys were running these haircuts back in '08, you know, last of the Mohegans stuff where it's a skinhead and mullets at the back, and I'm thinking, wow, man, these guys mean business. And I remember straight off the kickoff, you know, I just watched Sam Rapira just run as hard as he could with everything he had, and I just knew from that kickoff that today is going to be a special day, and there was no doubt in my mind after seeing that run that we were going to lose that game, and everything kind of went our way too. We had again, you got to create your own luck. We had a bit of luck on that day, but the belief and I guess, you know, the mana that everyone had on that day was something out of nowhere. They just come up out of nowhere, and I guess when you go back we reflect on that haka, and every haka, and especially that one, you know, being a young Māori kid, you know, and been really not too really early in my rugby league career, I wanted to, you know, alongside Isaac Luke, who we kind of went on a journey together through the Kiwi space, we wanted to, you know, throw down the challenge right there and then, and put a mark in the sand and say, nah, today's our day, and whatever we're going to do everything because we're calling on everyone to help us. And that's how it felt, is, you know, in those moments that I talk about, we reflect back on our journeys and the people that got us there, and our tupuna, and we're representing New Zealand, and you know, when we do haka, we're asking for our tupuna to give us the strength to go out there and do everything we do. You know, we're stomping on the ground because that's what we do. So that day was one of those special moments where, man, nothing was going to stop us that day because we got so much strength from beneath and above that we were going to be unstoppable.
Can I ask you a really hard question?
Go for it.
Who's the better coach? Wayne Bennett?
Yep.
Or you're a great coach from the Melbourne Storm and the man that picked you up in 2005 and obviously spent a lot of time with him. Who's the better coach?
Man, I love Wayne as a person and as a mentor, and I think he alongside you know, Steve and that thing gives you the belief to be who you are, and allows you to express yourself in a way that you play. And I think, you know, I had him in '08 in a small capacity, but then as I got older, and at the Broncos in 15, wanted me at the club because of who I was and what I could do, not only for the team or not only for myself, but the younger kids coming through, Māori and Pacifica kids. And I think I really understood who I was as a person by then, that I knew my role as a player, as a person, was to start giving back to our kids coming through. And he really mentored me through that space, but gave me the belief, which is a big thing when it comes to sports, is having a coach that believes in your ability and what you can create on the field, not only on the field but off the field. And that's what he done for me. Coaching wise, you know, and I said it earlier, like everything I learned and carried through my career was all come from the Melbourne Storm, and my learnings of the game, you know, was all come from down there. What I did on the field and off the field all come from my time in the Melbourne Storm. They paved and gave me those foundations to be the player I was and the person that I could be on and off the field.
It's a very diplomatic way of not answering the question.
But really, both good people.
Well done. I'll take the hint. You mentioned earlier media introspection and investigation. You copped a lot of flack once you left the Storm, and you talked about the reasons why you went to the Broncos at that time. But you copped a lot of flack, generally speaking, from media because of the way in which you played the game, which was tough, which was hard, and there was some cynicism about the way in which you played the game sometimes. But particularly, it seems to me at that time in the Broncos, you got a lot of heat, lots of people throwing stick at you. You know, there were some amazing amounts of numbers that people were talking about in terms of what you were earning. What's it like when all of that happens? How do you deal with that? And people will say, oh, you know, family and friends and support mechanisms and all that kind of stuff. But it's still tough at them.
Oh, it's it changed me, but made me stronger, not only as a person, but with my wife and my kids, made us so much stronger and more connected together. The one person that gave me most of the slack was Gordon Tallis. He over my years, whatever club I played for, it just didn't, either he didn't like the club or he didn't like me as a player. I've never met him personally and had a sit down and had a conversation with him. I think he'd change his mind if he actually sat down and had a chat with me, and we just had a coffee and had a yarn and had a laugh. Like I don't disrespect him. I know it's part of his job, but I just think some days when there is a limit to the abuse you can take, and I think some days, and this is where my wife comes into a lot of the stuff where she's like, why doesn't he just message you and say, hey, you want to come and have a coffee? Because she goes, people only see what you do on the field, and that's part of our jobs. They don't know you from outside of the rugby league realms because that's all they see. So those were the hardest times for me, I reckon, leaving Melbourne, because one, I wanted to leave to challenge myself as a person. Yes, financially it was good for my family, but I thought, every club was the same. That was my most really wrongdoing, is thinking that I was going to go from the Melbourne Storm and the West Tigers were going to be the same club as the Melbourne Storm. But I got all of that plus more when I went there. And the pressure of going as a marquee signing, which always comes with being a marquee signing and all this money. And yes, the media say you get all this money, but you're only worth as much as someone wants to pay you. But again, you've got to perform at the same time. And that's a big part and parcel of being a professional athlete.
Was the toughest time, though? I'm really loath to bring this up because I watched that 2017 World Cup game, and you were the captain.
Yeah, yep.
Against Tonga, and first of all, what an atmosphere!
Yeah, crazy.
But the result doesn't go your way.
Yep.
Was that the toughest time as a player?
Oh, no.
No?
I don't. No, I think that 2007 was a tough time for New Zealand Rugby League, and me being the captain of the Kiwis at that time. But there was a lot of shifting going on in the background before we got into to be able to be selected in the team. I think Stephen Kearney gets the new role at the Warriors, and there's like 6 weeks to go before the end of the season, and they're scrambling to find a coach. The next in line is obviously David Kidwell, who at the time has only been assistant coach, had not done too much of coaching at that high elite level. But before then, there was a couple of incidents from players where they're doing stuff in the media that they got caught up in, and previous to that, there was the Steel Knock stuff over in the Red Bulls over in with Sonny Bill and the boys over in the UK. Yeah. So there was a lot of trouble leading into that 17. So it didn't actually go to plan as they would like to. And then you get a rookie coach coming in trying to, under pressure from, I guess, NZRL to be able to keep these players under control after all the stuff that's been happening outside of the place. So a lot of that they brought a lot of, this is when I think the change of the Australian people started coming into the New Zealand frames. They brought a lot of Australians in to try and change the culture because of all of what's happened in the past. And most probably the big reflection on that for me was there was a lot more meetings and actually training on the field, because they were trying to find ways how we can change the culture and the behaviour of the New Zealand Kiwis. And
it must have been frustrating for you.
And as a captain and talking to the coaches, our hands were kind of tied. As I'm like, we can't be doing this many meetings because there's a more important thing for us is to win the World Cup or get to the final or win games, rather than sitting here trying to put rules around why we do what we do. Because you put rules around anyone, and especially in our game of rugby league, people will go and break them. And that's what a lot of that campaign was around. What is our culture? Who are we? What are values? These kind of things. And we get a lot of that anyway in general through your journey at clubs, and that just didn't work for us. And the results showed we didn't perform to the best we could. We had a real inexperienced group of players at that time. A lot of our leaders weren't involved then, whether it was due to injuries or whatever, but a lot of people pulling out of the camp and jumping over to Tonga, which was okay because I'm all for it. At the time, it's, I'm passionate about New Zealand, and I want people that want to be as passionate as I am. Not, if you don't want to be there, that's fine. Go and represent whoever you want. So a lot of puzzles were moving in the background, but it was moving too quick and nothing was actually set in stone. So the campaign goes on and we come up against a strong Tongan side and a great atmosphere down at Hamilton. And one of the most probably the best atmospheres I've played in when it comes to rugby league, and I've played in some grand finals. But man, that was red, and that day you could kind of feel. I think we had it early in the piece.
You were up, yeah.
And and with any of those Pacific teams, you give them a sniff, they just come hard, and that's what they did in that second half. We tried to overplay our hands, and they just come in and just took it away from us. So that was a tough game to lose, but then you go to Wellington, and you reflect back on that Wellington game, and you come up against a Fijian team who have got quality players, mind you, but a game that we should have won. Being a New Zealand team, and no disrespect to the Fijian team at the time, is that we should have won that game. I learned a lot about, I guess, leadership as a whole that campaign.
What did you learn?
Around about, how I can, I guess, being in tough situations and how I can communicate what we need to do next. That was the biggest learning, and being calm under pressure. That was most probably some of the good learnings for me. As I reflect back on that, the biggest one was being calm under pressure. Is, all right, bringing a group of young men together where they're looking for me for help, and being able to tell them directly or as a group, boys, we're still in this game. This is what we got to do next. Let's just get back to what we do really well. Those are some of the learnings that I learned about myself. But then reflecting back again, a lesson that I really, I guess I look back and go, and I sometimes you need some of those situations in sports as an athlete. You don't want them, but sometimes they make you better for the run. And, out of that, being calm helped me understand me as a leader and how I can speak to players under pressure. And I just took that upon myself to be able to reflect first, understand what I did right and wrong, but then use that in a way that I can be better next time in those situations.
Is it hard? Because people talk a lot about those who play professional sport. And there's lots of systems and processes, and you get so used to it that when you eventually decide to hang up the boots, it's really hard to go back to what people might call civilian life. I mean, is it that hard?
And I love it. Oh man, I could go in the bush and just go live off the land, man. Like that's my happy place is in the bush next to the ocean. Like I could do that any day of the week and not have to worry about seeing anyone, talking to anyone ever again. But I do hear of real people that do struggle after the game because...
Why have you been so successful at it? Is it because of the opportunities that you had post your career, and a long career, and a rewarding career, financially, in lots of other different ways, obviously. But, you set yourself up in life. But many people who have the same experience as you, have the same success as you have had, not just as an international player, but also in the NRL, winning championships, that kind of thing, still haven't had the same success off the field and have found it really difficult.
Yeah, I'm still trying to find, what I want to do. But I guess, like you said, with my career and what I've created, I've been able to create a reputation of who I am today and what I do. The opportunities that Rugby League gave me has given me the opportunity to choose where I want to go in life and to experience all that's out there. It's only been mostly this year where I've really opened my eyes up to the world, because rugby league for me is something I'm passionate about, that I can just fall into any day of the week because that's all I know. But the struggles for some people when you don't maximise the opportunity that you have while you're in the game is we find ourselves in some tough situations outside of the game when everything's going away from you. The one thing for me is obviously routine. That's the biggest thing for us as ex-athletes, former athletes, is you're up at a certain time. You live day to day because that's how you're structured and you're scheduled. Your weekends are taken up because you know what's going on. So everything's kind of planned out. Now there's a flexibility about life where there's no waking up at a certain time. There's no being somewhere. Everything's put in front of you. You have to try and find something that that keeps you ticking. And I guess the one thing for me and what's helped me through my whole career is my kids. When times are tough, they're the ones that I turn to because they don't care what I do. If I had a good day, a good game or a bad game, they would say, "Oh, Dad, if you're lost, your team was shit." And it's as simple as that. But I understand as a father, you leave your baggage at the door when you go out the door, and then when you come back in, you got to change into being a parent. And I think that was the biggest part that helped me on that journey. But then also outside of the game, finishing up, is that I wasn't going to be the person that sat around and done nothing. And I've never been a good speaker.
You're doing pretty well.
Yeah, but I've never been a good speaker. I try and be who I am, and this is who I want to be. I was lucky enough to jump on Sky and do some work there. But I'm still talking about the game I love and passionate about it. So I was never going to just sit around and do nothing. I jumped straight into my kids under sixes coaching. And getting a bit of taste from that high level down to that under sixes level is something crazy and different. But some of my best memories recently have been watching my 6-year-olds and 4 or 5-year-olds run around the field laughing and running backwards because they're going the wrong way. Those are, those make my sad days. But I like to be out in the community. I like helping. I'm passionate about giving our kids all the tools. If they want to go down the realm of being a professional athlete, giving them the tools that are going to help them succeed and not set them up to failure. I'm not big on selling them the dream because we all know that it's a tough gig and anything can happen on that journey as well. And only the tough survive as well. And a bit of luck, like I said earlier, luck plays a big part in your journey and where you head to. So passionate about the kids, passionate about our next generation of kids coming through. And I feel like my job and my responsibility as being Māori and being, I've played so many games for not only my country, but in the NRL, is to give all that knowledge back because, like I said, I could go up north and sit in the bush and no one would even have anything that I have in my head that I can give to these kids, and I just feel like if I was to do that, then I'm not doing myself justice or our people justice.
May you continue to ride that luck. I'm pretty sure we got on record you thought Bennett was a better coach than I'm pretty sure we got that on record. But the final thing I just wanted to say is I think there's an old kaumātua that I used to talk to by the name of Pat Campbell. I think he'd be pretty chuffed about his moko. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your time.
Awesome.